Paddle tail fishing, as far as I'm concerned, is the best, easiest, and one of the surest techniques to use learning how to throw artificials. I decided to do this video based off of some requests that I've had from people who fish but aren't quite as obsessed as I am with it. This is basic information aimed at new anglers or passive anglers. So to get right into it, the first lure that I would recommend everyone to learn is the basic paddle tail. While being extremely versatile, it's also extremely effective. All fish eat other fish. Most fish look for opportunity. Paddle tails can provide reaction strikes. You can cover all the water columns, work it slow and steady, fast, erratic, jig, figure out exactly what the fish are dialed into that day. And best of all, the paddle tails seem to work all year round. I always have one rigged up. Although this topic will need its own video, a general rule when mimicking a bait fish, as paddle tails do, is that bait fish tend to go with the tide, and your target fish will follow, or they may be hidden to ambush bait fish as they pass. In areas that have less current, this isn't so much an issue. With this said, I always try to cast against the current so that my paddle tail comes back to me with the current. Run the paddle tail alongside oyster bars, structure, docks, anywhere where a fish could be potentially hidden, and they may jump out and grab it. Alright, so the most basic of all paddle tail retrievals is this. So, we're in a mud flat. It's high tide going to low tide. So we're in about, we're going to say about 4 feet of water. We got our fish down here, little oysters, some oysters right there, he's chilling behind. Simple setup where we take our 1/8 ounce jig head with our 4 or 5 inch paddle tail. If the fish are really active, then step up in size, normally how I tend to do it. So you cast out, boom. Unlike my beautiful diagram is showing here, try to avoid casting directly on top of a fish as it will probably spook them. Try to go a few feet beyond them and work it back into their area. Drop it on. And obviously you don't want to hit the bottom because there's oysters down there and more than likely going to get snagged up right here. With that in mind, you're going to cast out and can consciously, as soon as it hits the water, maybe start reeling and then just reel at a real nice slow pace to where you're in the middle of the water column. That way that fish will be able to see it and you don't have to worry about getting hung up. It's a slow, steady retrieve, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Cast out, hits the water, just slow, steady retrieve. Now, if you're hitting the bottom, you feel hung up on the bottom, then speed up a little bit. If your lure's coming to the top, then obviously you're going too quick. You know, it's a nice happy medium there. It's a nice, slow, steady retrieve. I'd say 70% of the time, that's the technique that I'm using. The other technique is the double pop off the bottom. So that's the slow and steady when you cast out and just reel it back at one speed. Nice and slow. Okay, the second technique is called the twitch pause. And this works really good for flounder or anything that's on the bottom. Be mindful of that your bottom doesn't have snags on it, but even if it does, hopefully you'll be able to work around it. You're going to cast out and you're going to sink. And then when it hits the bottom, you'll see your line slack. Reel in your slack line, go twitch, pause. And on that pause, as the bait's dropping down, you're going to be reeling in your slack line. So you're going to go twitch, pause. Twitch, pause. And all that is cast out, sinks to the bottom, twitch, pause, slack line in. Twitch, pause, slack line in. Just like that. One of the best ways to catch flounder, in my opinion, just because that flounder is able to see that bait for a longer period of time. It's popping over the top of him as opposed to flying by, where he's only got a fraction of a second to go after it. This flounder will now see it moving above him, give him more time to react. It actually works great for all inshore species. I was just saying flounder because they're predominantly always on the bottom. So those are the two I want you to try, starting out with the 2 jig head sizes, 1/8 ounce and 1/4 ounce, and play around with them. This is what works for me. You may be different. You may want a heavier weight or a lighter weight. The current plays a factor into that. speaking more in the aspect of a slow to almost no current. When you get current involved, obviously you're going to want to step up your weight a little bit. Paddle tail fishing, as far as I'm concerned, is the best, easiest, and one of the surest techniques to use for artificial bait, learning how to throw artificials. Color-wise, if I'm in dirty water, I'm going to always have a chartreuse, a green-yellow color on one reel, and probably white on another one. Now, if I'm real clear water over the west coast, like Steenhatchee or something, I'm going to have something that looks identical to whatever the bait fish are in that area. That seems to work the best. I predominantly fish these murky waters over here in northeast Florida, so I'm usually trying to find a paddle tail that stands out or creates a really obvious shadow, meaning even like a darker color, like a black or something. But normally, to begin, I'll stick with chartreuse, green, yellow, a white, and then green lantern, dark green color. Those would be the three colors of artificial I would get right off the bat. Brand-wise, there's so many brands out there. I'd hate to endorse just one. I like Z-Man, preferably because they're LazTech technology. You barely have to move them to get that tail to move. They are harder to rig up on a hook, but they go a long ways. But try them all out. You know, just... There are some that I don't like as much, but I'm not going to say their names. Just be aware of the tail movement. Most of the time, you're going to want that tail movement. And some paddle tails are a lot stiffer than others, where that tail movement, the lure actually has to be moving pretty quick. You know, and sometimes you don't want to move it that quick. So just the stiffer paddle tails I tend to stay away from, unless I'm really going for a very subtle presentation, which that is very seldom that I'm looking for that much subtlety. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with me. Give this a shot. Artificial baits aren't that hard. You know, it's all about tricking the fish. In my opinion, it's the funnest way to fish.